He signed his name at 6:47 a.m., and with that signature, lost everything he'd worked 2 years to build. They told him the cameras didn't lie. That 11 crates of insulin pumps had gone missing on his watch. That a man with a 7-year-old daughter and $42 left in his wallet had somehow decided that Tuesday night was the night to throw it all away. He hadn't, but nobody asked. By noon, he'd given his last $40 to a stranger at a bus stop. A woman with expensive luggage and tired eyes who said her car had broken down. He didn't know her name, didn't ask for it back, just drove home with $2, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from doing the right thing on the wrong day. 24 hours later, 4 black SUVs pulled up outside his apartment. The woman's name was Elizabeth Crawford, and she owned the company that had just destroyed his life. October 14th, 6:47 a.m., Jimmy Sullivan signed his name on the timesheet and didn't know it was the last time he'd ever sign it. The pen didn't work at first, had to scribble hard circles in the corner before the ink came through. His fingers were cold. The break room heater had been broken for 3 weeks, and nobody from maintenance had come to fix it because maintenance had been cut to 2 guys for the whole facility, and both of those guys were busy with the loading dock door that wouldn't close right. So the break room stayed cold, and Jimmy signed his name, and the clipboard felt like it weighed 10 pounds even though it didn't. Sullivan. Gary Moss's voice came from behind him. Sharp, clipped, a voice that already knew it had won whatever argument was about to happen. Jimmy didn't turn around right away. He knew that voice, had known it for 2 years and 7 months. The way you know the sound of a dog that's bitten you before. Once is enough. Twice and you start flinching at footsteps. Sullivan. I need you in Mr. Davis's office. Jimmy turned. Gary Moss was standing in the doorway with his arms crossed over his chest. Navy polo. Same one he'd worn yesterday. Probably the day before that. Gary was 46 years old with thinning hair combed forward to hide a receding hairline that had already given up on being hidden. He stood in doorways like every room owed him rent. It's the end of my shift. Jimmy kept his voice flat, neutral, the way you talk to someone who's looking for an excuse. I know when your shift ends. I'm telling you. Davis's office. Now Jimmy set the pen down on the clipboard. His hands had that specific ache from 12 hours of lifting, where the joints didn't hurt so much as the spaces between them. He was 32 years old and most mornings he felt 45. This morning he felt 60. What's this about, Gary? He'll explain. Jimmy looked at him for a second. Gary's face didn't move, didn't blink. Just stood there like a man who had all the time in the world because he knew the other guy didn't. In 2 years and 7 months, Jimmy had noticed a few things about Gary Moss. Never said anyone's first name. Kept a spare key to the temperature-controlled unit on a lanyard under his shirt where nobody could see it, even though company protocol said the key was supposed to stay in the supervisor's lockbox. Jimmy had noticed that, had never mentioned it to anyone, not his business. He started thinking maybe it should have been. The walk from the break room to Kenneth Davis's office was about 400 feet. Past the loading dock where 2 guys from the night crew were still finishing up a shipment. Past the row of forklifts lined up like sleeping cows. Past the bulletin board where someone had pinned up a birthday card for a woman named Brenda who Jimmy didn't think worked there anymore. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything smelled like cardboard and diesel and the faint chemical sweetness of the floor wax they used on Fridays. It was Tuesday, so the smell was old, lingering. Stuck in the concrete. Davis's door was open. That was never a good sign. When Kenneth Davis closed his door, it meant he was on the phone with his wife or eating a sandwich. When his door was open, it meant he wanted people to see who was going in. Wanted them to know. Wanted the message to travel. Jimmy, come in. Shut the door behind you. Jimmy did. He sat down in the chair across from Kenneth's desk without being asked. Gary came in behind him and stood against the wall with his arms still crossed. Like he was watching a movie he'd already seen. Kenneth Davis was a big man, maybe 6'3", with a belly that had been a beer belly in his 20s and had slowly become just a belly in his 50s. He had a photograph of his grandson on his desk and a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest boss," which his daughter had given him as a joke and which he'd taken slightly too seriously. Jimmy had always liked him. Not the way you like a friend, the way you like a man who remembers your name and asks how your kid is doing. Jimmy. Kenneth was looking at the desk. Not at Jimmy. That was the first bad sign. Kenneth, there's been a situation. With the Regis Hollister shipment that went out Tuesday. Jimmy nodded. He remembered the shipment. Big one. 42 pallets of medical-grade equipment, insulin pumps and surgical tools, and a couple of crates of something Jimmy hadn't been cleared to know about. He'd helped load 6 of the pallets himself. What about it? 11 of the crates didn't arrive. Jimmy waited. Didn't arrive where? Anywhere. They signed in here. They signed out of the dispatch log. The truck made it to the distribution center in Albany, but 11 crates weren't on the truck when it got there. Okay, Jimmy said it slowly. That's a lot of weight to lose between the loading dock and Albany. That's what the insurance company is saying. Jimmy was starting to understand what conversation this was. He could feel it in the way Kenneth wouldn't look at him. In the way Gary was standing against the wall, enjoying something. Kenneth. Jimmy. Are you firing me? Kenneth finally looked up. He had the eyes of a man who had been up all night arguing with himself. There's footage. From the dock camera. Tuesday night at 11:47. You were on that dock alone for about 6 minutes. I was closing up. I close up every Tuesday. I know. I was doing my job. I know, Jimmy. Then what's the problem? The problem, Gary's voice came from against the wall, is that the paperwork shows you signed the last 4 crates onto the truck at 11:51. 4 minutes after the camera picked up what it picked up. And what did the camera pick up? You. Moving crates around. Off camera some of the time. Jimmy turned in his chair to look at him. Gary had a face that could be very expressive when it wanted to be. Right now it wasn't expressing anything. And that was the most expressive thing about it. Gary, you were here Tuesday night. I left at 10. No, you didn't. I did, Gary. I saw your truck in the lot when You're mistaken. The word mistaken landed in the room like a thrown rock. Jimmy felt his face go hot. Not from anger exactly, from something colder than anger. From the recognition of a thing being done to him. He turned back to Kenneth. Kenneth, I didn't take those crates. I know you didn't, Jimmy. Then why are we having this conversation? Because it's not up to me. Kenneth finally pushed a piece of paper across the desk. It was a termination notice. Already signed by someone in HR whose signature Jimmy didn't recognize. The reason for termination was listed as pending investigation. Loss of corporate property. Probable cause. The insurance company is driving this. And corporate. They want somebody off the payroll while the investigation runs. If it clears, you might be able to come back. If, Jimmy Kenneth. I have a kid. I know. I have a 7-year-old daughter and her mother's been gone for 4 years and I have rent due on the 15th. Jimmy. I know. I know all of it. I'm sorry. You're sorry. I'm sorry. Jimmy looked at the termination notice. His name was spelled correctly. His employee ID was correct. The date was correct. Everything about it was correct, except for the part where it said he had done something he had not done. He thought about his daughter, Ashley. He thought about the fact that he'd promised her a new pair of boots this weekend because her old ones had a hole in the toe, and she was too proud to say anything about it. But he'd noticed her stuffing a folded-up napkin into the toe last Thursday morning before school. He thought about the $42 in his wallet. He picked up the pen off Kenneth's desk and signed the notice. Jimmy? What? Kenneth. I really am sorry. Yeah. He stood up. Gary was still against the wall. Jimmy walked past him close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Gary didn't move. Jimmy didn't look at him. At the door he stopped. Gary, yeah, your lanyard's showing. Gary's hand went to his collar before he could stop it. He felt the lanyard under his shirt. The key tucked against his chest. He looked at Jimmy. Jimmy looked at him. Neither of them said anything. Jimmy walked out. The parking lot was cold in a way that went straight through cloth. Jimmy stood next to his truck for a minute without opening the door. His truck was a 2003 Ford Ranger with 214,000 miles on it. And the driver's side door didn't latch right anymore. And there was a crack in the windshield that ran from the bottom right corner up to about the middle where it stopped. For now, he'd bought it off a guy in Rutland for $1,200 3 years ago, and it was the second most expensive thing he owned. The first was Ashley's mattress. He got in. He sat. He didn't turn the key. The sun was just starting to come up over the green mountains, which meant the whole sky was that specific October color of an old bruise. The mountains looked farther away than they were. Everything did that morning. He thought about calling his sister. His sister lived in Phoenix, and they talked once every 3 or 4 months. And the last time they'd talked, she'd said, "If you ever need anything, Rye." And he'd said, "I know. I know." And he'd meant it, and she'd meant it, and he was not going to call her. He thought about calling Ashley's grandmother, his mother-in-law, Shirley, who lived on the other side of town in a small house that smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap, and who loved Ashley more than she'd ever loved anyone in her life. Shirley had offered more than once to help. He'd never taken her up on it, because Shirley lived on a fixed income, and he wasn't going to be the man who took money from his dead wife's mother. He thought about his wife, about Karen, about the fact that she'd been gone 4 years and 3 months, and he still sometimes reached for the other side of the bed. He turned the key. The truck coughed. He let it warm up for a minute before he put it in gear. He drove home the long way, through downtown. Because he wasn't ready yet to tell Ashley. It was 7:14 when he saw the woman at the bus stop. The bus stop on the corner of Maple and Vine wasn't a real bus stop anymore. The route had been cut in 2019 when the town council redid the budget. There was still a sign and a bench and a little plastic roof over it, but no bus came there now. Jimmy sometimes forgot that, and then remembered and thought it was kind of sad how a thing could stay in place long after it had stopped meaning anything. The woman was sitting on the bench. She had a small suitcase next to her. Black, the expensive kind with the recessed wheels. She was wearing a wool coat that looked warm, but not warm enough, and a pair of leather gloves, and her hair was pulled out back in a way that had started out neat and gotten messier through the night. She was maybe 30. She was looking at her phone. Jimmy drove past her, then he slowed down. Then about a block later he pulled over. He sat in his truck for a second. "Come on, Jimmy, just go home." He didn't go home. He made a U-turn at the next light and came back and pulled up in front of the bus stop and rolled down the passenger window. "Mom?" She looked up. She had gray eyes, very tired. "Yes, you all right?" "I'm fine. Thank you. That bus doesn't run anymore." She blinked. "I'm sorry. The bus. This stop. They cut the route a few years back. Whatever you're waiting for, it isn't coming." She looked down the street, then back at him. She had the face of a person who had been holding something together for a while and was starting to notice the seams. "I wasn't waiting for a bus. I was waiting for an Uber. It cancelled, twice. Out here you'll be waiting a while. Not a lot of drivers in this part of town this early. I'm figuring that out. Where are you trying to go?" She hesitated. It was a small hesitation, but Jimmy caught it Burlington. Eventually is a funny word for a Tuesday morning. She almost smiled. It didn't quite make it to her mouth, but it made it to her eyes. "My car broke down last night, on the interstate. I got a tow as far as the next exit and walked the rest of the way into town, and every motel said they were full, and I ended up here just to sit. I'm not usually like this. I'm usually quite organized. Everybody's quite organized until they aren't." That did make her smile barely. "You look cold." "I am cold. There's a diner on Main, 3 blocks that way. They open at 6. It's warm. I can drop you off." She looked at him. She looked at his truck. She looked at his face. Jimmy could see her weighing it. He didn't blame her. He was a 32-year-old man in a dirty Carhartt jacket, offering a woman alone at a bus stop a ride in a truck with a cracked windshield at 7 in the morning. And he could see exactly how that looked from the outside. "I can call you a cab instead. From my phone. I'll pay for it. That might be better." She tilted her head. "Why would you do that?" "Do what?" "Pay for a cab for a stranger." Jimmy thought about it. "My wife used to say that the world runs on people doing small, dumb things for each other. I don't know if she was right, but I figure I'm not going to find out by not doing them." The woman was quiet for a second. "Your wife sounds like a thoughtful person." She was. She caught the tense. She didn't say anything about it. Jimmy appreciated that. "I'll take the diner." "If you don't mind." "I don't mind." She stood up. She picked up her suitcase. It was heavier than it looked, and she had to set it down again for a second before she lifted it up into the bed of the truck. Jimmy got out to help her. She waved him off. "I've got it." "Thank you." She climbed into the passenger seat. She smelled very faintly like expensive perfume that had been worn for too long without being refreshed. The truck cab felt smaller with another person in it. Jimmy couldn't remember the last time anyone besides Ashley had sat in the passenger seat. He pulled out onto the road. They drove in silence for about half a block. "What's your name?" "Jimmy. Jimmy Sullivan." "I'm Beth. Just Beth. Just Beth for now." He glanced at her. She was looking out the window. "Okay, just Beth." They drove another block. "Can I ask you something, Jimmy?" "Sure." "You look like a man who's had a bad morning." He laughed. It came out shorter and harder than he'd meant it to. "That obvious? Your knuckles are white on the wheel." He looked down. They were. He made himself loosen his grip. "I got fired. About 45 minutes ago." "I'm sorry." "Yeah." "Can I ask why?" "They think I stole something I didn't steal." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why didn't you steal it?" He glanced at her, surprised. What? Why didn't you steal it? If you had the chance and you look like a man who needs money, why didn't you? He thought about it, not because he had to, because he wanted to give her a real answer, because my daughter's 7. And someday she's going to do something hard and I want her to be able to do it because I did hard things first. Beth didn't say anything. She looked out the window again. They pulled into the parking lot of the diner. The sign said Helen's in red neon, missing the E, so it said H Len's in the morning dim. Jimmy put the truck in park. Here you go. Thank you, Jimmy. She opened the door. Then she paused. Would you think I was strange if I asked you for another favor? I'm past being surprised today. My wallet was in the car, in the tow truck. I don't have any cash, just cards, and the diner's sign in the window says cash only before 9. Would you? He was already reaching for his wallet. He opened it. 2 20s and 2 1s. $42. It was the last $42 he had until unemployment kicked in, which would be at least 2 weeks and probably 3. He took out the 2 20s. He folded them once. He held them out to her. She stared at them. No, Jimmy. I can't take that. I meant like $10. I'll pay you back. Take it. Jimmy. This is $40. I can count. You just told me you lost your job. I did. And you have a 7-year-old daughter. I do. She looked at the money. She looked at him. Her eyes were doing something complicated that he couldn't quite read. Why? She said it quietly. He shrugged. Because you need it more than I do right now. I'm going home to a kid who loves me. You're going to a diner alone in a town you don't know. $40 isn't going to save my life. It might make yours a little less terrible for an hour. That's a deal I can live with. She took the money. She took it slowly. The way you take a thing you don't want to take, but don't know how to refuse. I will pay you back. I promise. Don't worry about it. I'm going to okay. She got out. She pulled her suitcase out of the truck bed. She stood in the parking lot for a second, holding the suitcase and the folded bills. Looking at him through the open passenger window. Jimmy Sullivan. Yeah, you have a good face. I don't know what that means, neither do I. But you do. She closed the door. He waited until she was inside the diner before he pulled out of the parking lot. He drove home the rest of the way with $2 in his wallet. The apartment was on the 2nd floor of a 3-story walk-up on Birch Street above a laundromat that made the whole building smell faintly of dryer sheets. The stairs were narrow and the banister was loose, and Jimmy had been meaning to fix it for a year. Ashley was already up. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas, eating cereal straight out of the box because they were out of milk, and she wasn't going to say anything about it. Her hair was a nest. She had a library book open in front of her. She was 7 years old, and she read at a 5th grade level, and sometimes Jimmy caught himself being almost afraid of her. Daddy, hey kiddo. You're home early. Yeah, did something happen? Jimmy set his keys on the counter. He took off his jacket. He hung it on the back of the chair. He sat down across from her. Couple of things. Actually, some bad. Okay. She waited. She was good at waiting. She had always been good at waiting. When her mother had been sick at the end, Ashley had been 3 years old, and she had sat in the hospital room for hours without complaining, drawing pictures on the back of intake forms, and Jimmy had thought at the time that it was just a phase and she'd grow out of it. She hadn't grown out of it. He wasn't sure she ever would. I lost my job this morning. Oh, it's going to be okay. I'm going to find another one. But for a little while things might be kind of tight. Tighter than now, a little. She nodded, chewing a dry Cheerio. Can we still get the boots? He almost told her yes. He almost lied. Maybe not this weekend, kiddo. Okay, but soon. Soon. Okay, Daddy. She closed the library book. She reached across the table and put her small hand on top of his big one. Her hand was sticky. He didn't know from what. Daddy. Yeah, did you do anything bad? No, okay. I promise, Ashley. I didn't do anything. I know. I know you didn't. She said it so simply that it almost knocked him backwards. She didn't say it like a question she was hoping would be answered the right way. She said it like a fact she had already checked. He didn't know what to say. He just squeezed her hand. Daddy. Yeah, kiddo. Are we going to be okay? He looked at her nest of hair, at her library book, at the cereal box with the cartoon bee on it that was almost empty. Yeah, Ashley. We're going to be okay. He didn't know if he was telling the truth. He hoped he was. He was so tired. The rest of the day went the way days like that go. He made phone calls. He filled out an online application for unemployment that kept timing out. He drove to the gas station on the corner and put $4 of gas in the truck with money from the change jar. He made Ashley a grilled cheese for lunch and ate the crusts himself and called it his lunch. At 3:30, he walked Ashley to school for her afternoon program, which was free. Thank God for the free afternoon program. And on the way back, he stopped at the corner and looked up at the sky and said mostly to himself, all right, I just need a break. He didn't know who he was talking to. He had stopped believing in the kind of listener who answered back a long time ago. He walked home. He sat on his couch. He stared at the wall. At 4:47 in the afternoon, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. Nobody called him with good news. At 4:52, it rang again. Same number. He let it go to voicemail. At 4:58, it rang a third time. He picked it up. Hello. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice. Familiar. Jimmy Sullivan speaking. This is Beth. From this morning. He sat up. Oh, hey, I wanted to thank you again. You don't have to. It's fine. I'd like to pay you back. Really, it's Jimmy. Yeah. Will you be home tomorrow morning? Around 9, he hesitated. He didn't know what to make of this woman. He didn't know how she'd gotten his number. He hadn't given it to her. How'd you get this number? I have my ways. That's not an answer. I know. I'll explain tomorrow. 9. He thought about it. He thought about Ashley at school. He thought about his $2. He thought about the look on her face in the parking lot when she'd said, "You have a good face." 9. Thank you, Jimmy. Beth. Yes. Who are you? There was a pause. A long one. Someone who owes you a debt. I'll see you in the morning. She hung up. Jimmy held the phone against his ear for another few seconds after the line went dead, listening to the silence on the other end, like he might be able to hear something in it. He set the phone down on the coffee table. He got up, he went to the window, he looked down at Birch Street, at the laundromat sign, at an old man walking a small brown dog, at the grey October sky pressing down on the rooftops like a hand on a shoulder. Somewhere very faintly he could hear a siren. It wasn't coming for him. Not yet. He stood at the window for a long time. The light outside began to change the way it does in the late afternoon in Vermont in October, going from grey to a deeper grey to a bronze that settles over everything before the dark comes on. Jimmy watched it change. He didn't move. He was thinking about Gary Moss's lanyard. He was thinking about the way Kenneth Davis hadn't been able to look at him. He was thinking about Ashley's hand on top of his at the kitchen table, sticky with something he couldn't identify, and about how he had told her they were going to be okay. He didn't know yet that 4 black SUVs were already being scheduled to drive up his street in the morning. He didn't know yet that the woman he had given his last $40 to owned a company with 18,000 employees on 3 continents. He didn't know yet that the man who had framed him was at that very moment sitting at his kitchen table across town, pouring himself a 3rd glass of whiskey, believing he had gotten away with it. He stood at the window as the bronze faded out of the sky. Down on the street, the old man with the brown dog turned the corner and disappeared. A car passed, then another, then nothing for a long time. Jimmy Sullivan stood at the window, in a 2nd-floor apartment above a laundromat, in a small town in Vermont, with $2 in his wallet and a 7-year-old daughter who believed him when he said things were going to be okay. And he waited for the morning to come. He didn't sleep. Not well anyway. Jimmy hadn't really slept well since Karen died. Not the way other people talked about sleeping, where you closed your eyes and woke up and the time between had felt like a gift. For him, sleep was something else. A room you sat in while waiting for morning. But this night was worse than usual. He lay on his back in the bedroom that was really just a closet with a mattress in it, because he'd given Ashley the bigger room 2 years ago, when she'd started asking for a space for her books, and he stared at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like the state of Michigan. He stared at it for so long that at some point around 3 in the morning the state of Michigan became a horse, and then a dog, and then the face of Gary Moss grinning with his thinning hair combed forward. He got up. The kitchen floor was cold through his socks. He filled the kettle. He stood at the counter waiting for the water to boil. Out the kitchen window the sky was still full dark, and across the alley the windows of the building opposite were mostly dark too, except for one on the 3rd floor, where a woman Jimmy had never met stood at her own kitchen counter doing what he was doing. Her face lit blue by the glow of a phone screen. They did not wave at each other. They had never acknowledged each other, but Jimmy found himself oddly grateful she was there. The kettle clicked. He poured the water over a tea bag that had already been used once. He'd started doing that last month. 1 tea bag, 2 cups. Karen would have laughed at him. She'd been the kind of person who bought fresh flowers every Saturday. Not because they were rich, They weren't. But because she said it kept the house from knowing they were broke, he still thought about that. The idea that a house could know things. He carried the tea into the living room and sat on the couch with the cup on his knee and watched the window for a while, just watching the dark go a little less dark, until it was the color of wet cement, and then the color of dust, and then finally morning. He looked at the clock. 7:13. He had an hour and 47 minutes before Beth knocked on his door. Or didn't. It occurred to him that she might not come, that this whole thing might be the kind of odd little episode a man has when he's had a very bad day, where a stranger says something kind to him in a parking lot, and for a few hours he convinces himself the world has noticed him. He half expected 9 o'clock to pass without anything happening. He woke Ashley at 7:30. He made her toast with the last of the peanut butter. He brushed the back of her hair while she brushed the front, because she couldn't see the back in the mirror, and she didn't trust him to do the front. She put on her boots with the hole in the toe. He walked her to the corner where Shirley met her on school days. Shirley was a small woman in her early 60s, with a face that had been beautiful once, and was still interesting now. She wore a red coat that was too thin for the weather, and a scarf that Karen had knitted her the winter before she got sick. Shirley saw Ashley from half a block away, and opened her arms without saying anything. And Ashley ran the last 20 feet into them. Jimmy. You look terrible, thanks. Are you eating? I'm fine, Shirley. That's not what I asked. Jimmy didn't answer. Shirley studied him for a second, the way she studied everything, and then she nodded once, a small concession, and let it go. You'll pick her up at 5. I'll pick her up at 5. Ashley, you have your lunch? Yes, abuelita, good girl. Kiss your father. Ashley turned and ran back to Jimmy and hugged him around the waist, hard and fast, the way she always did, like she was making sure the hug got all the way through. And then she ran back to Shirley and took her hand. Jimmy watched them walk down the block until they turned the corner. Shirley did not look back. Shirley never looked back. Ashley looked back once, waved, and was gone. He walked home slowly. The sidewalks were slick with frost that wasn't really frost yet, more like the memory of it. A man across the street was trying to start a snowblower that probably hadn't been started since last March. The snowblower coughed and gave up. The man swore at it in Russian. Jimmy didn't know it was Russian, just that it wasn't English. He got back to the apartment at 8:22. He made his bed. He hadn't made his bed in a month. He didn't know why he was making it now. He wiped down the kitchen counter. He put away the 2 clean dishes from the drying rack. He stood in the middle of his living room and looked at it like a stranger would, and he saw the sag in the couch and the $2 lamp from the thrift store and the bookshelf he'd built himself out of boards from Panalat. And for a second he felt something that was not quite shame, but was adjacent to it. And then he let it go, because there was no version of the next hour in which his apartment became a different apartment. And there was no point in pretending there was. At 8:56 he heard the engines. He was in the kitchen rinsing out his teacup. He turned off the water. He listened. He walked to the front window of the living room and pulled back the curtain. 4 black SUVs were parked on Birch Street. They had come down the block without him hearing them arrive. They were parked in a loose, staggered line. Military vehicles in the movies parked this way. Although Jimmy had never been in the military, and couldn't have said if he was right about that, they were big and clean, and looked like they had never driven on a dirt road in their lives. Men in dark suits were getting out of 3 of them. 2 men from the first, 1 from the second, 2 from the third. The 4th SUV still had its driver inside and its passenger door closed. Jimmy counted the men. He counted them again. He was not someone who was used to counting men in suits in front of his building. He let the curtain fall. He stood in the middle of his living room. And he noticed with the small part of his brain that was still noticing things that he was holding a dish towel. He set the dish towel on the arm of the couch. A car door opened downstairs. He heard it from the sidewalk, through the thin glass of his window. Footsteps. The outer door of the building opening. The mailboxes clanging shut because the outer door always banged them when it swung too hard. Footsteps on the stairs. 3 knocks. Jimmy walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. He had the strangest feeling, which was that if he did not open the door in the next 5 seconds, his life would go on being his life. And if he opened the door, it would not. He opened the door. The man on the other side was in his 50s, tall, clean-shaven, built like someone who had once played a sport nobody remembered him for. He had a Bluetooth thing in his ear. He was not smiling. Mr. Sullivan, yes. My name is Stephen Wright. I work for Miss Crawford. She's in the vehicle. She asked if you'd be willing to come down and speak with her. Down to the street. Yes, sir. She doesn't want to come up. She didn't say so. She said to ask. Jimmy looked past him. The hallway was empty. He could see through the stairwell window the top of one of the SUVs. Miss Crawford. That's her last name. Yes, sir. Beth Crawford. Elizabeth Crawford. Yes, sir. Jimmy had heard the name before. He couldn't place it exactly. He had the feeling of trying to remember a song lyric by its second word. Give me 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Don't say sir. The man stopped. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth and then gave up. All right. Jimmy closed the door. He leaned his forehead against it for a second. He walked back into the bedroom and put on a clean shirt. A blue flannel that had been Karen's father's. And that was a size too big for him. He looked at himself in the mirror over the dresser. He ran a hand through his hair. He needed a haircut. He'd needed a haircut for 2 months. He went downstairs. Stephen Wright was waiting on the landing. He walked down behind Jimmy, not beside him. A person who was used to walking behind someone. Out on the sidewalk, the other men in suits were standing in positions that were not random. Jimmy noticed that one of them was at each end of the block. One was watching the alley. The other 2 were near the vehicles. Nobody was looking at Jimmy directly. They were all looking at everything except Jimmy, the 4th SUV, the one that had not let anyone out. Was the one Stephen walked him to. Stephen opened the back door. Elizabeth Crawford was sitting inside. She was wearing a different coat than yesterday. Charcoal, longer, and a cream-colored turtleneck under it, and her hair was no longer pulled back messily, but was down and brushed and sat on her shoulders, like a thing that had been attended to. Her eyes were the same, gray, tired in the specific way she'd been tired at the bus stop, like tired was something she wore more than something she felt. Jimmy, please get in. He got in. Stephen closed the door behind him. The door was very heavy. It closed with a sound like a bank vault. Inside the SUV was warm. There was a faint smell of leather and coffee. There was a small console between the 2 back seats, and on the console there was a steel thermos and 2 paper cups, and she was pouring coffee into one of them as he sat down. I hope you take it black. I take it however it comes. She handed him the cup. Her fingers were cold. You lied to me yesterday. I did not lie. You told me your name was just Beth. I told you that was my name for then. That was true. I did not give you my full name. That is not the same as lying. Most people would call that the same. Most people are imprecise. He looked at her. She looked at him. She had a small private smile at the corner of her mouth that was not quite amused and not quite apologetic. I'm sorry, Jimmy. That was a lawyer's answer. I apologize. It's okay. It's not okay. She took a sip of her own coffee. The SUV was not moving. The driver was sitting in front with the engine off, looking straight ahead through the windshield like he was made of wax. Who are you? My name is Elizabeth Crawford. I run a company called Crawford Logistics International. We move freight, medical supplies, electronics, agricultural equipment, some high-value industrial materials. We have operations in 41 countries. We employ about 18,000 people. Jimmy looked at her over the rim of his coffee cup. Okay. I heard you. You're not surprised. I'm very surprised. I'm just not going to show it in front of you. She laughed. It was a real laugh. Short. Almost startled. That's fair, your company. Crawford Logistics, yes. That's a holding parent, isn't it? Yes. It owns subsidiaries, yes. One of those subsidiaries is called Regis Hollister. Her smile faded, yes. Jimmy set his coffee down on the console. He looked at the dashboard of the SUV and then back at her. You own the company that fired me. My company owns the company that fired you. That's splitting hairs, maybe. Did you know that, when you let me drive you to the diner, I knew you were a warehouse employee at one of my subsidiaries. I knew there had been a disciplinary event concerning you. I did not know the specifics. I was not working off a list with your name on it, Jimmy. I was sitting at a bus stop in the cold, and you were the person who stopped. You were at the bus stop on purpose. Yes. You weren't stranded. I was not stranded. There was no broken down car. There was no broken down car. Jimmy leaned back in the seat. He could feel the leather through his shirt. He was trying not to let his face do anything. So yesterday was a test. Yesterday was a coincidence that I took advantage of. That's a nicer way of saying yes. I suppose it is. I gave you my last $40. Yes, because I thought you were stuck. Yes, and you weren't. I wasn't, Jimmy. Hold on. Let me think for a second. She held on. She let him think. The silence inside the SUV was a very expensive silence. Out the tinted window, he could see the second-floor curtains of his own apartment, and for a second he felt like he was seeing them from very far away. From someone else's life. Why were you there? At the bus stop, I told you. It was half a mile from the facility. No, I mean you have 4 SUVs. You have a security team. You could have surveilled the facility from anywhere. Why did you sit at the bus stop in the cold alone at 7 in the morning? She was quiet. Beth, I don't know. You don't know. I do not give you an answer when I do not know. I am telling you I do not know. Sometimes in this job I do not know why I do the things I do. I just do them. And afterwards, when they work, I write them up as strategy. And when they don't work, I write them up as lessons. That's not an answer. It is the best I have today, Jimmy. He leaned back in the seat. The SUV had gotten onto the highway. The hills were rolling past the window, brown and gray, with the last of the October leaves clinging to the trees, like people who hadn't been told the party was over. The sky was the color of a pigeon's back. I hope you find its mind what? Whatever you were looking for at the bus stop. She didn't answer. She looked out her window, not at him. But he saw in the reflection on the glass that she was almost smiling, in a way that was not about anything good exactly. It was the smile of a person who had just recognized something in themselves they had been trying not to recognize. Why am I here, Beth? I need your help. With what? The thing that got you fired. The theft. I didn't do it. I know you didn't. How do you know? She looked at him for a long second, because of yesterday. Because a man who would give away his last $40 on the worst day of his life does not move 11 crates of insulin pumps off a truck at midnight on a Tuesday. I am not sentimental, Jimmy. I am making an operational assessment. The math does not work. The math? Yes, the math of human beings. I have been in this business for a long time. I know what thieves look like. Thieves do not give away $40 to strangers. Thieves do not tell their daughters they want them to do hard things. Thieves have certain tells. You do not have any of them. The man who framed you, Jimmy, has all of them, Gary. I did not say Gary Moss. I did not say Gary Moss. But it's Gary Moss. She opened a folder that was on the seat next to her. He hadn't noticed before. She took out a single sheet of paper and handed it to him. The sheet had a table of numbers on it. Dates, times, shipment IDs, and a column of what looked like weight variances in pounds. Those are the dispatch logs for the Regis Hollister facility over the last 14 months. Every shipment that left that dock, the weight on the loading manifest, the weight at the first weigh station on I-89, and the variance between them. Jimmy looked at it. He started reading it. He couldn't help himself. He felt his brain doing the thing it did when it saw a pattern before he'd consciously recognized it. Like the feeling of almost sneezing. These variances are tiny. Most of them are under 30 pounds. That's within normal packing variance, yes. But some of them aren't, no. And the ones that aren't. Look at the dates. He looked at the dates. He saw it after about 4 seconds. They're all Tuesdays, yes. Tuesday nights, yes. Between 10 p.m. and midnight, yes. When Gary Moss closes out the dock, I did not say Gary Moss. Jesus, Beth. She smiled, small well. Now you're just confirming what I already won't confirm. He handed the sheet back to her. His hands, he noticed, were shaking slightly. Not a lot. Just a little. You want me to prove it? No, I can prove it. I have already mostly proven it. My compliance team has been building a case on this for 3 months. Then what do you want from me? I want you to help me finish it. Why me? Because the legal case requires testimony from a line employee who can speak to the physical operations of that dock. Because my compliance people are excellent at data and mediocre at physical plant. Because you worked that dock for 2 years and 7 months, and you know which loading bay doors close quietly and which ones don't. And you know how long it takes a forklift to cross the floor. And you know where the blind spots are in the camera coverage. You know things that are not in any report. And because you were the man who was supposed to take the fall, Jimmy, and the cleanest way to end this properly is for the man they tried to destroy to be the man who puts the evidence on the table. Jimmy was quiet for a long time. I have a daughter, I know. I can't do something dangerous. I am not asking you to do something dangerous. I am asking you to work inside a legal process with my legal team, with my security team, and with pay? Pay? Yes, how much? Your base would be the salary of an internal compliance associate. That is $84,000 annualized. I am offering you a 6-month contract to start with the option to extend, and a signing bonus to compensate for the wrongful termination, which we will characterize as a settlement. The settlement is $60,000. It would be paid out this week. Jimmy stared at her. $60,000 this week. You're offering me $60,000. I am offering you what my legal team estimated a wrongful termination suit against Regis Hollister would cost me to settle out of court, minus the legal fees on both sides. It is not generosity, Jimmy. It is arithmetic. Is everything arithmetic with you? She thought about it. Most things. Some things aren't. Which things aren't? She looked at him for a second, then as she looked away. Out at the window. At the laundromat. I will have to get back to you on that one. He sat with the coffee in his hand, and with the sheet of numbers between them, and with the quiet of the SUV around him. And he thought about Ashley, and about the boots, and about the $2 in his wallet, and about Gary Moss's lanyard, and about Kenneth Davis not being able to look at him. If I say yes, I'm not doing this for the money, I don't believe you. But go on. I'm doing it because that man tried to put this on me. He tried to put it on me because he thought I'd take it. He thought I was the kind of person nobody would miss. And I want him to look at me when it comes apart. That is a perfectly acceptable reason. Okay, pause, okay, I'll do it. She didn't smile. She nodded once, sharply, like a business transaction had been concluded. Thank you, Jimmy. When do we start now? If you can. I would like you to come with me to my team's operations site. It is about 40 minutes from here. You will sign a contract. You will sign a non-disclosure, and then we will start work. I will have you home by 5. You can pick up your daughter. You know about the 5 o'clock pickup. I know a number of things about you, Jimmy. I had a briefing last night. That's unsettling. I imagine it is. I'm sorry. No, you're not. She almost smiled. I am a little sorry. Not enough to have done it differently. Fair. She'd knocked once on the partition between the back seat and the front. The driver turned the key. The SUV's engine came to life very quietly, almost smoothly. A thing that has been well made by people who were paid well to make it. Jimmy, yeah, one more thing before we drive, okay? When you see Gary Moss next, and you will see him again, you will not say anything to him. You will not look at him with anything on your face. You will not threaten him. You will not warn him. You will let him believe he has won. For as long as I ask you to. Can you do that? He thought about the lanyard. He thought about you're mistaken. He thought about Kenneth Davis's eyes when he said it's not up to me. Yeah, I can do that, good. Because I'm going to ask you to do it for several weeks. Okay. And Jimmy, yeah, I will pay you back the $40. Don't worry about it, I am going to. Okay. She took a single crisp bill out of a small wallet she had in her coat pocket and handed it to him. It was 100, I said 40, I know. The rest is interest, Beth. Take it, Jimmy. Or I will be annoyed. He took it. He folded it and put it in his wallet next to the $2 that was still in there. He could feel the weight of it, which was ridiculous because a $100 bill weighed the same as a $1 bill, but he could feel it. The SUV pulled away from the curb. The other 3 SUVs pulled out behind it in formation. They moved down Birch Street in a slow black line, and the old man with the small brown dog who was out for his morning walk stopped on the sidewalk and watched them go by with his mouth slightly open. Jimmy sat in the back and watched his own street slide past the tinted window. He saw the laundromat. He saw the corner where Shirley had met Ashley an hour ago. He saw the little handwritten sign on the door of the pharmacy that said back in 15 minutes, and had said back in 15 minutes, for as long as Jimmy had lived in that neighborhood. Where are we going exactly? A building my company owns outside of Montpelier. It is off the books. Very few people at Regis Hollister know it exists. Off the books? Not illegally, just not advertised. Got it. She was watching him. He could feel it, Jimmy. Yeah, you're not afraid. I'm a little afraid. You don't look afraid. I've been very afraid for 24 hours straight. I think I ran out this morning. That happens? It happened to you? Not for a long time, when I was younger. Not for a long time now. He looked at her then, and he saw something pass across her face that was not the face of a billionaire or a CEO or a woman in a charcoal coat in the back of an armored SUV. It was the face of a person. Briefly, and then it was gone. And the face of the woman who ran the 18,000-employee company was back. And she was looking out the window at the hills. The building outside Montpelier didn't have a sign. It was a long, low brick structure set back from the road, behind a line of pine trees with a gravel drive and a small guard hut at the entrance. The guard waved them through without looking. Inside the lot was full of unmarked cars, not SUVs, regular cars, Hondas and Subarus, and an old Volvo with a dented fender. Jimmy had expected it to look like a spy movie. It looked like a dental office that had seen better years. What is this place? It used to be a printing plant. My grandfather owned it. We refitted it about 20 years ago. It is where I send projects I do not want discussed at the main office. You own your grandfather's printing plant. I own everything of my grandfather's. He was not a very generous man in life. It turned out he was very generous after. Inside the building was bright, clean, and quiet. There were maybe 30 people in the main open space sitting at desks, looking at monitors, talking in low voices. They did not look up when Beth walked in. They were not pretending not to look up. They simply did not look up. Jimmy got the impression that they had long ago established that when she came in nobody stopped working, because if they stopped working she would find them something to do. And it would be harder than what they had been doing. A woman came toward them. She was tall, black, mid-40s, wearing a gray suit and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She carried herself like someone who took up more space than her body actually did. Beth Patricia. This is Jimmy Sullivan, Jimmy. This is Dr. Patricia Coleman. She runs my internal compliance team. She is the person you will report to, Mr. Sullivan. Jimmy's fine. Jimmy, welcome aboard. I understand we have you on a rather short fuse, so let's get you sorted. She turned on her heel. Jimmy followed. He glanced back at Beth, who was already 3 feet away from him and moving in a different direction. Her head turned toward a man who had materialized from somewhere with a tablet in his hand, and was talking to her in a low, urgent tone. She won't be at your orientation. She has 21 things to do today before 11. You will mostly work with me. Is that going to be a problem? No, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. I'm not your mother. Yes, ma. Stop talking. Yes, better. She led him into a conference room. On the table was a thick folder, a pen, and a laptop. You will sign the paperwork first. Then you will read it. Don't you usually do that the other way? Usually people do. You are on a clock. You can read after. If there is something in there you object to after you read it, you can come to me, and we will discuss it, and I will probably tell you no. Sit down. He sat. He signed the paperwork where she pointed. He signed an NDA that was 14 pages long. He signed a contract. He signed a settlement agreement that had a check attached to it with a paperclip. A real physical check. Already printed for $60,000. Made out to James Sullivan. He stared at it for a second. It'll clear by Friday. Deposit it today. Don't carry it around. Right now, come here. She walked him to another room. A smaller one. Windowless. With 3 monitors on a desk and a whiteboard on one wall. On the whiteboard was a chart in blue marker, with dates and times and names and arrows. Jimmy saw his own name on it in the bottom corner, with an arrow pointing to it that said framed October 14. This is where you will work for the next 6 weeks. This is the room where we pull it apart. You will sit at that desk. You will have a bad chair. I apologize for the chair. We've had trouble getting a new one through procurement. Okay, we know most of what happened. We do not yet know all of it. We know it is not 1 man. We believe it is 3. We believe one of them is above Gary Moss in the org chart, which is the part we have not yet nailed down. Your job is going to be to help us nail it down, because you know that org chart, and you know those people. And some of them you have been inside a break room with for 2 years. Who do you think it is? The one above Gary. Patricia looked at him for a long second. Jimmy, yeah, I'm going to tell you a true thing about this work, and it is the only speech I will give you. So listen, okay? The people who do this kind of theft do not think they are thieves. They think they are underpaid. They think the company owes them. They think they are clever. They are not clever. They are greedy and they are lazy. And they leave tracks they do not see because they do not think anyone is looking. Your warehouse supervisor does not believe he did anything wrong. He believes he took what was his. This is important for you to understand, because when we eventually put him in a room with a lawyer, he will not cry and he will not apologize and he will not ask for your forgiveness. He will look at you and he will tell you it was not personal. Do you understand? Yeah. Good. Now sit down and let me show you what we have. She opened a file on the monitor. Jimmy sat in the bad chair, which was in fact very bad. He pulled himself up to the desk. He looked at what was on the screen. It was the dock camera footage from the Regis Hollister warehouse, Tuesday night. 11:47 p.m. Jimmy saw himself on the screen, moving crates, living a life he did not yet know was being taken from him, and in the corner of the frame. For just 3 seconds at 11:49:6, he saw a second shadow move behind a forklift, a shadow that should not have been there. He leaned forward. Play that again. Patricia played it again. You see him? Yeah, I recognize him. Not from that. From anything? Jimmy watched the clip a 3rd time. The shadow moved behind the forklift, paused, and then slipped out of frame. As it slipped out, something on the shadow's chest caught the light. For just a fraction of a second, a thin line, a lanyard. Yeah, I recognize him. Patricia watched his face. Good. Let's get to work. Jimmy sat forward in the bad chair. He did not feel afraid anymore. He did not feel tired anymore. He felt for the first time in a very long time like a man with a door to walk through, and a reason to walk through it. He reached for the mouse. Outside the windowless room somewhere in the building, a phone rang and was not answered. A coffee machine hissed. A keyboard clattered. Somewhere in another part of the state, Gary Moss was waking up in his recliner, where he had fallen asleep with the television on, and he was stretching and yawning and pouring himself the first cup of coffee of a morning he believed was going to be like every other morning. He was wrong about that. He just did not know it yet. The first week was numbers. Jimmy had not expected that. He had expected the kind of thing you saw in movies. Men in suits, standing in rooms full of whiteboards, drawing lines between photographs. What he got was a chair that made his lower back ache by 11 in the morning. 3 monitors that were always on, and numbers, dwackle variances, timestamp logs, badge swipe records, GPS pings from the tractor-trailer fleet, thermostat data from the temperature-controlled units. He had not known until that first week that a warehouse generated this much data. You could have printed a book about a single Tuesday night and still not said everything there was to say about it. Patricia worked him hard. She was not unkind about it, but she was not warm either. She would bring him a file and set it on the desk. Before lunch, she would come back at 11:50 and hold out her hand for it. And if it was not ready, she would not scold him. She would just look at him for 3 seconds and walk away. And he would find the next day that the file she had given him for that morning was a little bigger. He understood her after the first 3 days. She was not testing whether he could do the work. She was testing whether he could do it faster than he thought he could. The answer, it turned out, was yes. He got home at 5 every night. Beth had been good on that. A car came for him at 4:30 every afternoon, and the driver, who was a heavy man named Larry with a beard like a Civil War general, did not make small talk and did not ask him how his day was. Larry drove with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. Jimmy came to appreciate this enormously. Ashley did not ask him about the new job. Not the first week. She knew he had a job again because he had told her so the night of the day he'd signed the paperwork. Sitting on the edge of her bed, while she brushed her teeth in the little bathroom across the hall. "I got a new job, kiddo. It's temporary, but it's a real one," she had said with toothpaste around her mouth. "Do you like it?" And he had thought about it for a second. "I think I'm going to." She had nodded and spat into the sink. She did notice the new boots, though. He had stopped at the mall on his way home that Friday, the day the check cleared, and he had bought her the boots. Brown, lined with something soft. 2 sizes too big so she'd grow into them. He had also, without quite meaning to, bought her a winter coat, which she did not need, and a pair of gloves, which she did. He put the bag on the kitchen table. She came out of her room and saw the bag, and she walked over very carefully. The way she walked when she was afraid a thing might not be real, and she opened the bag and looked inside. And then she looked up at him. "Daddy, yeah, this is a lot. I had a good week at work." "Okay." She pulled out the boots. She held them up. She looked at them the way a person looks at a thing they have not believed they were going to have. She did not squeal. Ashley was not a squealer. She just held the boots for a long time. And then she said very quietly, "Can I put them on now? Even though we're inside?" And Jimmy said, "You can put them on now, kiddo." And she sat down on the linoleum and unlaced them with her small, serious hands and put them on. She walked around the kitchen in her new boots for about 10 minutes, not saying anything, just walking. And Jimmy stood at the sink and pretended to wash a dish that was already clean. That was the first week. The second week was when he started to notice that he was being watched. It was not a dramatic noticing. It was not a man following him in a trench coat down an alley. It was smaller than that. It was the same car behind him in the rearview mirror 2 mornings in a row. A grey Toyota Camry with a small dent in the front bumper. He had seen the same car parked across from the apartment the night before. Both nights, he told himself he was being paranoid. On the Thursday of that second week, he told Patricia about it anyway. Patricia did not laugh. Patricia did not say, "You're being paranoid." Patricia picked up her phone, dialed an extension, "Get me the plate of a grey Camry that followed Sullivan in this morning," and hung up. She looked at Jimmy. You should have told me on Monday. I thought I was being paranoid. Jimmy, you are not a paranoid man. Your problem is the opposite. Your problem is that you give people the benefit of the doubt longer than is wise for you. When you notice something, tell me about it. Even when you think it's nothing. Especially when you think it's nothing. Okay. Her phone rang 90 seconds later. She picked it up, listened, nodded once, and hung up. The Camry is registered to a leasing company in Burlington. The leasing company rents to small businesses. One of the small businesses is a private investigator named Dale Roford. He is not a very good private investigator. He is the kind you hire when you are not very sophisticated and you want to know if your wife is cheating. Someone paid him to put eyes on you. Someone like Gary. I did not say Gary. Is it Gary? Patricia smiled very slightly. It is Gary. So Gary thinks I'm a threat. Gary thinks you are a loose end. What do? We let him watch. We let him see you take your daughter to school. We let him see you come home. We let him see a man who is trying to pull himself together after losing his job. That is what he wants to see. That is what you are going to show him. And in the meantime, I am going to have someone put eyes on Dale Roford and on everyone Dale Roford reports to. And we are going to follow the money from the other end.
Okay, Jimmy, yeah, you look a little pale. I'm fine.
Are you armed? I'm sorry?
Do you own a firearm? No. Do you want one?
No, good.
I was going to say no anyway.
Okay then. Do you have anyone who stays with your daughter at night? Her grandmother's on the block, 3 buildings down. Good. Keep it that way. We will put a man on your street at night for a while. You won't see him. He won't knock on your door. He will be there. Is that all right with you? Jimmy thought about it. Yeah, that's all right with me. He went back into the windowless room. He sat down in the bad chair. He looked at the whiteboard, which had grown a lot of new things on it in 10 days. There were photographs now. Gary Moss in a grainy security still walking to his car in the parking lot. A man named Donald Pierce, the regional operations director above Gary, who Jimmy had met exactly twice in 2 years, and who had both times struck him as someone who shook your hand with one hand while checking his watch with the other. And a third photograph, a woman, mid-40s, whose name was Linda Hart, and who worked in the corporate accounts department at the headquarters IPS. And Jimmy had never met her. Until that morning, he had not known she existed. Linda Hart was the one who signed off on the paperwork that moved the missing crates onto a ghost tick shipping manifest, routed through a shell company in Detroit that did not exist, which then routed through another shell company in Chicago that technically existed but had never done any other business, and which terminated in a private warehouse outside of Boston, where the crates were broken down, and the content sold through 3 different black market medical supply channels. The whole ring had generated in the 14 months. Patricia's team had been tracking it something in the neighborhood of $11 million. Linda Hart, as best anyone could tell, had received a little under 400,000 of it. Gary Moss had received about 800,000. The man who had received the rest was Donald Pierce. Donald Pierce, Jimmy learned, that second week had recently bought a vacation home on Lake Champlain. He had also quietly paid off his ex-wife's lawyers in a settlement that had otherwise been about to go very badly for him. He had a son at a private college in Rhode Island. The son did not know his tuition had been paid for the last 2 semesters, with money that had been stolen 1 insulin pump at a time from the company his father worked for. Jimmy stared at the whiteboard for a long time that Thursday afternoon. Patricia came in around 3. You look upset. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I'm thinking about the kid. What kid? Pierce's son, at the college. What about him? He's going to find out. Yes, that's not going to be a good day for him. No, it is not. He didn't do anything wrong, no. And he's going to lose his dad. And he's going to lose his tuition. And he's going to find out his whole life for the last 2 years was a lie. Yes, that's the part of this I don't like. Patricia sat down on the edge of the desk. She took her reading glasses off their chain and held them. Not putting them on. Just holding them. Jimmy, yeah, that is going to happen whether you help us or not. The only thing your work changes is how soon it happens and how cleanly. If it happens in 2 months instead of 6, the ring unwinds with about half as many other lives broken in the process. If it happens through a careful legal process instead of a messy federal indictment, the kid will have a chance to keep his education. Because Pierce's ex-wife has a settlement that our lawyers can structure to include his remaining tuition. If you walk away, none of that happens. The kid still loses his dad. He just loses him louder. Okay, I'm not telling you to feel good about it. I'm telling you to keep working. Okay, she stood up. She started to leave. Then she paused at the door. For what it's worth, the fact that it bothers you is why she picked you. Who? You know who? She left. Jimmy sat at his desk, and he looked at the photograph of Linda Hart, and at the photograph of Donald Pierce, and at the photograph of Gary Moss. He looked at them for a long time. Then he picked up the mouse and he went back to work. He did not see Beth again for 10 days. He had thought the first few days that she might come into the building, that he might turn a corner and see her. She did not. Patricia mentioned her twice, both times in passing, as in Miss Crawford wants the midweek update by Wednesday, and Miss Crawford asked if you were settling in. I said you were, that was it. He did not ask about her. He told himself he did not need to. He was being paid to do a job. The job was the job. He was not being paid to think about the woman who had hired him. He thought about her anyway. Not in any way that meant anything, he told himself. Just in the way that a man thinks about a person who has done something unexpected for him. He thought about the way she had said most things are arithmetic. And then when he'd asked which things weren't, she had said, I will have to get back to you on that one. He thought about her grey eyes in the SUV. He thought about the moment at the bus stop when she'd said, you have a good face. And about how she had said it, not like a compliment, but like a diagnosis. On the Monday of the third week, she came to see him. He was alone in the windowless room. It was just past 4 in the afternoon. The office outside had the quiet hum it had when people were finishing their days, typing a little slower, stretching their shoulders, getting ready to go home. Jimmy had been staring at a spreadsheet for maybe 40 minutes, looking at it without reading it, and he was about to close the file and call it. The door opened behind him. He didn't turn around. He assumed it was Patricia. I'll have the heart summary for you in the morning. That is good to hear. He turned in the chair. Beth was in the doorway. She had on a black sweater and black jeans and boots. Not the boots of a person who spent her day in an office, but the boots of a person who had been walking outside. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was a little red from the cold. Miss Crawford, Beth, please. Okay? Are you almost done? I can be, then finish. I'll wait. She came into the room and stood behind him, looking at the whiteboard, while he saved the file and closed the spreadsheet and shut down the monitors. Nobody had ever stood behind him while he worked before. He was aware of her silence in a way that made him work more slowly than he usually did, because he kept thinking he was about to make a small mistake. You've added a lot to that board. Patricia did most of it. I doubt that. Patricia's handwriting is worse than that. Half of that's yours. He stood up. He turned off the desk lamp. The room was lit now only by the overhead fluorescence and the small glow of the monitors going to sleep. Walk with me. Out of the building. Yes, it's cold. I know. Put your jacket on. He put his jacket on. He followed her out of the windowless room, through the main floor where people were getting up and going home. And nobody made a point of looking at them, and nobody made a point of not looking at them. And out the front door. It was dark already. 15 in late October, and the sky was a navy blue that felt almost purple with one star already in it hanging over the pines. The parking lot lights were the orange sodium kind that made everyone look a little yellow. There was a path that went around the side of the building, a gravel path, and she walked on it, and he walked beside. How's your daughter? She's good. She's got new boots. That's good. Yeah. They walked maybe 30 feet without saying anything. Beth, yes. You didn't come out here to ask me about my daughter. I did actually, but I also did not. Okay. I want to ask you something, Jimmy, and I want you to answer me honestly. Okay. She stopped walking. He stopped too. They were maybe halfway down the gravel path, at a bend where you could see out across the pines to the hills beyond. The wind was picking up. She had her hands in her jacket pockets, and her shoulders were up a little against the cold. Do you trust me? He thought about it. He thought about it longer than she probably expected him to. I don't know yet. She nodded. That's a good answer. It's an honest one. Why do you ask? She looked out at the hills. Because I'm about to ask you to do something that I cannot do through Patricia. I need you to do it for me personally. And I need you to know that if you say no, I will not hold it against you. And if you say yes, I'm going to put you in a room with a man. And I'm going to ask you to lie to him. Jimmy was quiet. Lie to who? Donald Pierce. What? I want you to go see him. I want you to tell him that you have information that could clear your name, but that you are willing to make it disappear for a price. I want you to tell him that you know something the company does not know, and that you will stay quiet about it for money. I want you to tell him you need $60,000. He'll know I already got 60,000. He will not. Your settlement was handled through a shell. His visibility into the lower part of the organization is less than he thinks it is. He will not know what you were paid and by whom. He will not be able to verify it quickly, which is part of why he will bite Beth. That's entrapment. It is not. Entrapment is when the government induces someone to commit a crime they would not have otherwise committed. I am not the government. And Donald Pierce has already committed the crime. We are simply creating an opportunity for him to confirm on audio that he has committed it. On audio? Yes. You want me to wear a wire? I want you to wear a wire. Jimmy turned and looked at her. She was still looking out at the hills. You understand that I'm a warehouse guy? I understand that you are an extremely observant man who has been working in a warehouse. There is a difference. Beth, I've never done anything like this in my life. I know. I don't know what to say to a man like that. You don't have to say anything fancy. You have to go in nervous. You have to go in like a man who has been pushed into doing something he doesn't want to do. That is not a hard performance for you, Jimmy. Because it is the truth. You're going to be nervous. You're going to have been pushed into doing something you don't want to do. All you have to do is let him see it. And then you have to ask for the money. And you have to let him talk. Why me? Because he will believe it of you. He already thinks you are the kind of man who takes what he is offered. He thinks that because he is the kind of man who takes what he is offered, and he cannot imagine a man who isn't. That is going to be the thing that ruins him. But it is also what makes this possible. Jimmy shook his head. Can't Patricia get him some other way? She can. She will eventually. But it will take months. It will take careful subpoenas and federal cooperation, and a sit-down with the district attorney. It will take a very long time and a lot of very expensive lawyers. And in that time, 2 more shipments are going to get moved. And 2 more men are going to get framed for moving them. And one of those men might be fired. And one of those men might be arrested. And I am not willing to wait that long. I have waited long enough. Then do it legally. Do it the slow way, Jimmy. I am asking you. I am asking you because I think you can do it. And because I think you will do it well. And because I trust you to do it without getting yourself hurt. But I'm asking you, if you say no, we will do it the slow way. I will not punish you. He turned and looked at her. She was facing him now. The light from the sodium lamp at the end of the path was barely reaching them. Her face was half in shadow. Her eyes were steady on his. What happens to me if this goes wrong? If it goes wrong, nothing happens to you legally, because you will not have committed a crime. You will have taken a meeting with a senior executive of the company that fired you, and you will have floated a suggestion. You did not execute anything. You did not take money. The only thing that will happen if this goes wrong is that he will not say what we need him to say. And we will walk out. And we will try again through the courts. What if he does more than refuse to say it? Meaning what? Meaning what if he decides I'm a threat and calls someone? He will call someone. He will call Gary. Gary is already watching you. Gary will be in the meeting. Listening on a phone from the parking lot, almost certainly. That is fine. That is in fact better. Because if Pierce implicates Gary in the conversation, we catch both of them at once. So you're putting me in a room with 2 men who have already spent months trying to destroy me. Yes, with a wire. In a building I don't control. You will not be alone in the building. Stephen will be outside. My security team will be in position. You will have a panic word. If you say the word, we come through the doors. What's the word?
You pick it. Jimmy thought about it. Burlington.
Why Burlington? Because I've never had any reason to say Burlington in a sentence with those men. And because that's where she lives.
Who?
Ashley's grandmother, Shirley. She was born in Burlington, all right. If you say Burlington, we come in. Okay, pause. Okay, you've heard me. Or okay, I'm agreeing. She breathed out. It was the first sign that she had been holding her breath. He noticed it. She noticed him noticing it. Thank you, Jimmy. Don't thank me yet. I'm thanking you for being willing, whatever happens. Okay? They stood there on the gravel path for another second without saying anything. The wind moved through the pines. Somewhere far off a dog was barking. And somewhere a little less far off a train was going by. The long low horn of it carried across the hills. Beth. Yes, why do you do this? Do what? This. Any of it. The bus stop, the 4 SUVs, the windowless room. You could hand this off. You could let Patricia run the whole thing. You could sit in a boardroom, you don't. She was quiet for a long time. My father owned this company before me. He was, I think you would say, a corner-cutting man. Not evil. but not honorable either. He built things quickly, and he did not ask too many questions about how the people under him built things. When he died, I inherited a company that had a reputation for results, and a reputation for being a little dirty. And I spent the first 5 years of my time here trying to clean it, I thought. Because I am stubborn, that by the time I was 30 I would have made it a clean company. How old are you? 30 pause. Yes. I am 30, and my company is not clean. And I realized 2 years ago that part of the reason it is not clean is because every generation of executives under me has learned to tell me what I want to hear. The way they learned to tell my father what he wanted to hear. I cannot trust the reports. I cannot trust the briefings. I cannot trust the dashboards. The only thing I can trust is what I see with my own eyes, in places where they do not know I am looking. So I go to bus stops, Jimmy. I go to bus stops, and I watch. And sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I'm right. And sometimes a man pulls over and gives me $40, and I find out something about my company I could not have found any other way. What did you find out? I found out that there are still honest men in the field, and I found out that I had stopped believing there were. Jimmy didn't know what to say to that. He looked at her, and he saw her, the whole of her for a second. Not as a billionaire in a charcoal coat, not as the woman who ran his life for the moment, but as a person who was tired in a particular way, and who had been carrying a particular thing alone for a long time. He wanted to say something that would help her. He didn't know what it would be, Beth. Yes, if I do this. The wire, the meeting after, when it's all over, the whole thing. Will you stop sitting at bus stops for a while? She looked at him. She almost smiled. For a while. Yes, I think I could stop for a while. Good, Jimmy. Yeah, it's cold out here. Yeah, it is. We should go inside. Okay. They walked back down the gravel path toward the building. The windows of the main floor were lit from inside in a warm yellow that spilled out onto the lot. Stephen Wright was standing in the parking lot, as Stephen Wright tended to do. Watching the road, he nodded at them as they approached. He did not ask where they had been. He never asked where they had been. At the door she stopped. It will be Thursday. This Thursday? Yes, that's 3 days. Yes, okay. Patricia will brief you tomorrow and Wednesday. On Thursday morning you will meet Pierce at his office in Burlington. He thinks you are coming to ask about appealing your termination. He has agreed to see you because he thinks he is being generous. You will know what to do when you get there. Okay. Jimmy. Yeah, don't tell your daughter where you are going on Thursday. I wouldn't, I know. But yeah, be careful. I will be. She held out her hand. He took it. She did not shake it. She just held it for a second, very briefly. And then she let go. Thursday morning was cold and very clear. Cold that made the inside of your nose sting when you breathed. Clear that made every distant thing look a little closer than it was. Jimmy drove himself. That had been his request, and Patricia had grudgingly agreed. He drove his own truck. The 2003 Ford Ranger with the driver's side door that didn't latch right. Up the highway toward Burlington. Stephen and 2 of his people were in a car somewhere behind him. Larry was in another car somewhere ahead of him, a technician named Brian, a very thin young man with red hair, who had fitted him with the wire that morning, was in a van 2 blocks from Pierce's office, listening on headphones. The wire was taped to his chest under his shirt. He had not expected it to itch. It itched. He parked in the visitor lot at the Regis Hollister corporate office at 9:47. He had been told to arrive early. He sat in the truck with the engine off for 3 minutes. He looked at himself in the rear view. He looked like a man who had lost his job and had spent the last 3 weeks thinking about it. That was what he was supposed to look like. So it was probably fine. At 9:51, he got out of the truck. He locked it. He walked across the lot toward the glass front of the corporate office. He passed a gray Camry with a small dent in the front bumper parked 2 rows back. He did not look at it. He had been told not to look at it. The driver of the Camry was reading a newspaper in the front seat. He was not actually reading. His eyes flicked up as Jimmy walked past. Inside the building, it smelled like a dentist office. Bright, clean air with a faint chemical sweetness under it. There was a woman at the front desk. She was young, and she was on the phone. She looked up at Jimmy. She held up a finger into the phone. I'm going to have to call you back. Hung up and pressed a button on her console. Mr. Pierce. Your 10 o'clock is here. A voice came back through the little speaker, muffled, but cheerful. Set him up. The woman smiled at Jimmy. It was not a real smile. 3rd floor. He'll meet you at the elevator. Thanks. In the elevator, Jimmy watched the floor numbers tick up. He told himself to breathe. He told himself to let his hands sweat if they wanted to sweat. He told himself, as Patricia had told him 7 times in the last 3 days, that the goal of this conversation was to say very little. To let Pierce talk. And to ask for money. The elevator opened on 3. Donald Pierce was waiting for him. He was 54, not tall. Built like someone who had been in decent shape in his 20s and had spent 30 years since then letting it go. He had a navy blazer over a white shirt and no tie. He had the smile of a man who was good at smiling without meaning it. He stuck out a hand. "Jimmy, good to see you. Come on back to my office, thanks for seeing me." Of course. We have to take care of each other, right?" Jimmy shook his hand. The hand was soft. It did not belong to anyone who had ever lifted a crate. They walked down a hallway with framed photographs on the walls. Trucks, distribution centers, a group photograph of the board. Pierce was in the group photograph. So was a woman Jimmy did not recognize, and a man he did. A man who had once visited the warehouse in Rutland, and who Jimmy had been introduced to as Mr. Crawford, the founder, Beth's father. He was dead now from what she had said. He did not look like his daughter. His eyes were different, harder. Pierce's office was a corner, one with 2 walls of windows. The windows looked out over the parking lot, and beyond it to the distant ridge of the Green Mountains. There was a large desk. There were 2 chairs in front of it. Pierce gestured Jimmy to one of them and sat down in his own chair behind the desk. "So, Jimmy, how are you holding up?" "Honestly, Mr. Pierce." Donald, I've had a rough month." "I bet you have. You got a tough break there." "Tough break?" "Yes, sir. I want you to know, Jimmy, that from my side of the building, I was not comfortable with how that was handled. Not comfortable at all. You're a good worker. Kenneth Davis has been with us a long time, and he's never said a bad word about you. You understand? I appreciate that. But you have to understand, the investigation is not in my lane. The insurance people, the corporate compliance people, they drive that process. I can't override them, even if I wanted to. My hands are somewhat tied. I understand, so. You wanted to talk about an appeal? I think my assistant said, Sort of. Jimmy took a breath. He made himself look down at his hands. He let them shake a little. He didn't have to fake it. They were shaking on their own. "Mr. Pierce." "Donald. Please, Donald. I've been going over everything in my head for the last 2.5 weeks. Every night. And I've been looking at things. Old paperwork, schedules. I have a good memory for numbers. Okay, I know some things." Pierce's face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Jimmy saw it. It was like watching a door close, very quietly. "Far away, what kind of things?" "I know when the variances started. I know which Tuesdays they happened. I know which loads were light by how much. I've been keeping records. I have them written down at home. Jimmy, and I have a friend at the way station. Used to be a friend. He sent me some way tickets. Without without telling his boss. And I started looking at those tickets, Donald. And I noticed something. I noticed that the dates line up with when a specific person has a specific route open. And I noticed something else too. I noticed that the paperwork at our end has been signed off by somebody at corporate every time. Same person. Same initials." Pierce was very still. "Jimmy, I want you to think carefully about what you're saying to me. I've been thinking about it for 2.5 weeks, Donald. I'm not here to start anything. I'm here because I've got a kid. I've got a 7-year-old. Her mother died 4 years ago. I had a job I was good at, and it's gone. And I can't get another one in this industry. Because when somebody calls for a reference, they're going to hear about a missing Sinslin shipment. Nobody's going to hire me in logistics. Not in this state. Maybe not in any state. I've been looking. I need to take care of her. I need to get out of Mont. I've got my mother-in-law in Burlington. But I can't stay near this place. I need a fresh start, Pops. I need $60,000, Donald, to start over. And if I had that, I'd lose my paperwork. All of it. And I'd sign a letter saying I was retracting every accusation I've made internally on my way out. Pierce did not answer for a long time. Jimmy made himself look up at him. Made himself look right at him. He kept his face the face of a man who was ashamed of what he was saying. And doing it anyway, $60,000. Yes, sir. You understand that if I wrote you a check for $60,000 out of this company, it would be in every audit report we have from 3 different departments by the end of the month. I wasn't asking for a check. What were you asking for? I was asking for a man like you to figure out how to get $60,000 to a man like me in a way that nobody sees. And I think you've figured out how to do something like that before. Pierce's face changed. It was not a big change. It was the smallest change. His mouth tightened at the corner. A single muscles along his jaw moved. Jimmy. Yes, sir. What exactly do you think you know? I think I know what Tuesday nights look like at that dock. And I think I know whose initials are on the paperwork at your end. And I think if I ever said those things in a federal courtroom, they would be very interesting to a federal judge. And I think, Donald, that I don't want to say them anywhere. I want to disappear. I want $60,000 and a clean reference letter and a train ticket out of the state. And then I don't know you and you don't know me. And Gary Moss never heard my name. Pierce looked at him. Jimmy looked back. It was a long moment, much longer than Jimmy had been prepared for. He could hear a clock ticking somewhere in the office. He could hear very faintly the hum of the heater. Let me ask you something, Jimmy. Yes, sir. Who sent you? Nobody sent me. Somebody sent you. You're a warehouse guy. You don't walk into my office on a Thursday morning with this kind of number in your mouth. Somebody put you up to this. Was it a lawyer? No, sir. Was it somebody inside this company? No, sir. Was it a reporter? No, sir. Donald, I've got a kid and no job. I don't need a reporter. I need money. Pierce watched him. Pierce was not a dumb man. Jimmy could see it on his face. He was calculating. He was running math. He was considering whether Jimmy was a man on his own or whether Jimmy was a man with handlers. And then slowly Jimmy saw the math tip. Pierce smiled. Not a big smile, a small one. The smile of a man who had decided for reasons of his own greed and his own arrogance that he was looking at a fly he could swat. Jimmy. Yes, sir. 60,000 is a lot of money. Yes, sir. I don't have $60,000 of my own money to give you this afternoon. I understand. What I could do, hypothetically, is put you in touch with someone who does. Okay, this person would not be the company. This person would be a private individual. The money would come to you in a way that could never be traced to this company or to me. Are you following? Yes, sir. And in exchange, Jimmy? Yes, sir. In exchange, you would never speak about Tuesday nights again. To anyone. Ever. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Because if you ever did, Jimmy. Yes, there are 2 or 3 people who would be very unhappy with you. And they would not be unhappy in a way that you would find survivable. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Pierce leaned back in his chair. He exhaled. He looked for a second, almost relaxed, like a man who had just finished solving a small household problem. Give me a number I can reach you at. It's in the file. Give it to me again. Jimmy gave it to him. Pierce wrote it down. Somebody will call you in the next 72 hours. You will meet them in a place they pick. You will bring the records, all of them. Not copies, originals. They will bring an envelope. That will be the end of it. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Jimmy? Yes. One more thing, yes. I want to make sure we understand each other. You're a father. I'm a father. I have a son in college. Rhode Island.
Good school, good kid.
I understand what it is to want to take care of them. I am not angry at you for coming in here. I am glad you came to me instead of anyone else. I think you made a smart decision today. I just need you to stay smart. Are you going to stay smart? Yes, sir. All right then. He stood up. Jimmy stood up. Pierce walked him to the door of the office. At the door, he put a hand on Jimmy's shoulder. Not in a friendly way. In the way a man puts a hand on something to see how heavy it is. Take care of yourself now. Yes, sir. Jimmy walked to the elevator. He pushed the button. He waited. The elevator took forever. He did not let himself look back at Pierce's office. He did not let himself breathe. He kept his face the face of a man who had just made a bad deal out of desperation. The elevator came. He got in. The doors closed. He rode down 3 floors without moving. When the doors opened on the lobby, he walked out past the woman at the front desk. She was back on the phone. She did not look up. He walked out through the glass doors into the cold, clear October morning. He walked across the parking lot, past the gray Camry which he did not look at. To his truck, he unlocked it. He got in. He closed the door. He put his hands on the steering wheel. He sat there for a second. Then, very quietly, he said one word for the benefit of the technician 2 blocks away with the headphones on Burlington. There was no response in his ear because he was not wearing an earpiece. But he didn't need one. He knew on the other end of the wire people were moving. He started the engine. He put the truck in gear. He drove out of the parking lot, and down the road, and onto the highway. And when he hit the on-ramp, he realized his hands were still shaking, and had been shaking the whole time. He drove south toward Montpelier, with the heater running and the radio off. And one phrase repeating in his head over and over in Pierce's voice. I am glad you came to me instead of anyone else. He had him. He had him on tape. He drove for a long time without speaking, and somewhere around the second rest stop he started to laugh. Quietly. Not because anything was funny, but because his body had to do something with what it was carrying. And when the laugh finished, he was crying a little. And he let himself cry for about 30 seconds. And then he wiped his face on his sleeve. And kept driving. The facility outside Montpellier looked different when he pulled into the lot. Same building, same pine trees. But it looked different because he was different. He parked the truck. He sat in it for a minute. He got out. Stephen was waiting for him at the door. "You all right?" "Yeah, you did good." "How do you know?" "Because Brian's smiling, and Brian never smiles." Jimmy walked inside. The main floor was quieter than usual. People were at their desks, but they were not typing. They were waiting. Patricia was standing in the middle of the floor with her arms crossed. She saw him. She nodded once. Conference room now. He followed her. She closed the door behind them. On the table was a laptop, and on the laptop was a waveform, audio, playing in real time. Jimmy could hear his own voice, tinny, and then Pierce's voice, clear. Patricia reached over and paused it. "We got him, yeah?" "Yeah." He said enough in the first 5 minutes to build a case, and then he said more. "And then he threatened you," which was stupid of him, but predictable. "What happens now?" "Now we transcribe it. We send it to our lawyers. Our lawyers send it to the district attorney. The district attorney opens a criminal case. And in about 3 weeks, Donald Pierce is going to have a very bad morning." "What about Gary?" "Gary too." Pierce mentioned him by name twice. Once when you brought him up. Once when he didn't. "That's enough? And Linda Hart?" "Her too. She'll get a deal probably. She'll testify against the other two. She'll do probation. Maybe a year. The men will do more. How much more?" Patricia looked at him. "Jimmy, I don't know yet. Federal sentencing guidelines for fraud of this scale, with aggravating factors. Pierce is looking at somewhere between 4 and 9 years. Gary is looking at 3 to 6. It depends on a lot of things. How much they cooperate, whether they take a plea, whether the judge is having a good day." Jimmy sat down in one of the conference room chairs. He put his head in his hands. "You all right?" "I don't know. You did the right thing, did I?" "Yes." Patricia sat down across from him. She took her reading glasses off and set them on the table. "Jimmy, yeah, listen to me. That man in that office, Donald Pierce, he has been stealing from sick people for 3 years. He has been using the money to pay off his ex-wife and send his son to college and buy a house on a lake. He framed you. He would have framed someone else if it wasn't you. He threatened you today. In the recording, he told you that people would hurt you if you talked. That is not a good man. That is not a man who deserves your sympathy. I know. Then why do you look like that? Because I just destroyed somebody's life. No, you didn't. He destroyed his own life. You just held up a mirror. She stood up. She picked up her glasses and put them back on. Go home, Jimmy. Get your daughter. Tomorrow we'll do the paperwork. But today you're done. Okay. And Jimmy, yeah, thank you. He drove home. He picked up Ashley at 5. She ran to the truck the way she always did. And she climbed in. And she smelled like crayons and hand sanitizer. How was school, kiddo? Good. We learned about volcanoes. That's cool. Very cool. Did you have a good day at work, Daddy? He looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window. Not at him? Yeah, kiddo. I think I did. That night he made her spaghetti with the jar sauce. And he let her have 2 cookies after dinner, which was 1 more than the rule. And he read her 2 chapters of her library book, which was also 1 more than the rule. And when she was asleep, he sat on the couch in the living room, and he looked at his phone. There were no messages. He thought about texting Beth. He did not know what he would say. He set the phone down. He sat in the dark for a long time. 3 weeks later, Donald Pierce was arrested at his home on Lake Champlain at 6:15 in the morning by 2 federal agents and a state trooper. His son was not home. His son was at school in Rhode Island, which was on purpose, because Patricia's team had timed it that way. Gary Moss was arrested the same morning at 6:22 at his apartment in Rutland. He was in his bathrobe. He did not resist. Linda Hart was not arrested. Linda Hart walked into the federal building in Burlington with her lawyer at 9 a.m. and gave a statement that was 41 pages long. And then she went home. Jimmy did not see any of it happen. He learned about it from Patricia, who called him at 7:30 that morning and said it's done. And he said, okay. And she said, how do you feel? And he said, I don't know yet. The case moved faster than Jimmy had expected. Pierce's lawyer tried to fight it, but the audio was clean, and the transcripts were clear, and the forensic accounting that Patricia's team had built over 4 months was airtight. Pierce took a deal in January. 4 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 2.5. Gary took a deal 2 days later, 3 years. With the possibility of parole after 18 months, Linda Hart got probation, and a fine and community service, and a criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. The money, most of it, was recovered. $11 million is a lot of money. But it is not so much money that it disappears. It was in accounts. It was in real estate. It was in offshore trusts that were not as offshore as the men who had set them up believed they were. Crawford Logistics International recovered about $8.5 million of it. The rest was gone, spent, dissolved into the economy the way stolen money always is. Jimmy learned all of this in pieces, in phone calls from Patricia, in emails from lawyers whose names he did not recognize, in a formal letter from the district attorney's office thanking him for his cooperation in the investigation. He did not feel the way he thought he would feel. He thought he would feel victorious. He thought he would feel like a man who had won something. He did not feel like that. He felt tired and a little sad and grateful it was over. In February, on a Tuesday afternoon, Patricia Crawford would like to see you. When tomorrow? If you can, where? Her office. In Burlington. Okay. Jimmy, wear something nice. He did not own anything nice. He wore the blue flannel, the one that had been Karen's father's, and a pair of jeans that did not have paint on them. And he drove to Burlington in his truck. The Crawford's logistics headquarters was a glass building downtown. Tall, clean, with a lobby that had marble floors and a receptionist who looked like she had been hired specifically to make people feel underdressed. Mr. Sullivan. Miss Crawford is expecting you. 14th floor. He took the elevator up. The doors opened onto a floor that was mostly glass, windows on 3 sides, and in the middle of it, a single desk. Beth was sitting at the desk. She was wearing a gray suit, and her hair was up, and she looked like a different person than the woman who had sat at the bus stop. But when she looked up and saw him, her face changed. And for a second, she was the same person again. Jimmy, come in. Sit down. He sat. There was a chair across from her desk. Leather. Expensive. Uncomfortable in the specific way expensive chairs often are. How have you been? I've been okay. Patricia tells me you've been exemplary. I don't know about that. I do. I've read the reports. Okay. She leaned back in her chair. She looked at him for a long second. Jimmy, I asked you here because I want to offer you a job. I have a job. The contract runs through April, I know. This would be a different job, a permanent one. If you want it, doing what? Deputy CEO for field operations. You would report directly to me. Your job would be to visit our facilities, all of them. Not just the ones in Vermont, the ones in Ohio, in Texas, in Nevada, in Pennsylvania. Everywhere we have a warehouse or a distribution center, you would talk to the people who work there. You would look at the operations. You would tell me what you see. And you would tell me what needs to change. Beth, I'm a warehouse guy. I know. That's why I'm offering you the job. I don't have a degree. I don't care. I don't have management experience. You have something better. You have the trust of people who do not trust management. You walk into a warehouse, and the people on that floor will talk to you. Because you were one of them. And you still are. That is worth more to me than an MBA. What's the salary? $140,000. Plus benefits. Plus travel expenses. Plus a housing allowance if you want to move closer to Burlington. Or if you want to stay in Rutland. That's fine too. Jimmy stared at her. $140,000. Yes. That is what the position pays. I am not doing you a favor, Jimmy. I am hiring you because you are the right person for the job. If you don't want it, I will hire someone else. But I would prefer to hire you. He sat there. He looked at her. He looked out the windows at the city of Burlington, spread out below them. He thought about Ashley. He thought about the apartment on Birch Street. He thought about the fact that he had spent the last 4 months learning how to read spreadsheets and build cases and sit in windowless rooms. And he thought that maybe he could do this too. Okay, I'll take it. She smiled. It was a real smile, the first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. Good, you start Monday. Monday? Is that too soon? No, Monday's fine. She stood up. She walked around the desk. She held out her hand. He stood up. He shook it. Welcome to the team, Jimmy, thanks. She held his hand for a second longer than a handshake usually lasts. And then she let go. One more thing. Yeah? You're going to need to get a haircut. He laughed. He couldn't help it. Yeah, I know. 6 months later, Jimmy Sullivan was standing in a warehouse in Amarillo, Texas, talking to a forklift operator named Miguel about a loading dock door that didn't close right. And Miguel was telling him that he'd reported it 3 times, and nobody from maintenance had come to fix it. And Jimmy was writing it down in a notebook. And he was thinking about a different warehouse, and a different loading dock door, and a different version of himself. He flew home that night, to Burlington, where he had an apartment now, a nicer one, with 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen that had a dishwasher. Ashley had her own room, with a bookshelf that Jimmy had not built out of pallet wood that he had bought from a store. She was at Shirley's for the week, because Jimmy traveled 3 weeks out of every month, and Shirley had moved to Burlington to be closer to them. And Ashley went to a school that had an art program, and a library, and a teacher who had told Jimmy at the parent conference that his daughter was the smartest kid in the class. And Jimmy had said, I know she is. He unlocked the apartment door. He set his bag down. He looked around. It was quiet. It was clean. It was his. He thought about the apartment on Birch Street. He thought about the $2 lamp. He thought about the bookshelf made of pallets. He did not miss it exactly, but he remembered it. His phone buzzed. A text from Beth. How was Amarillo? He typed back. Loading dock door doesn't close. Reported 3 times. Nobody came. 3 dots. Then, says me the facility manager's name. He sent it 3 dots. Then done. It'll be fixed by Monday. He stared at the text. He typed, you're going to fire him? 3 dots. Then, no, I'm going to ask him why he didn't fix it. And then I'm going to fix the system that let him ignore it 3 times. That's the job, Jimmy. Remember? He smiled. Yeah, I remember. 3 dots. Then dinner this week? He stared at the text for a long time. They had not had dinner. Not once. In 6 months of working together. She traveled as much as he did. Maybe more. They saw each other in conference rooms, in airport lounges, on video calls, but they had not had dinner. He typed. Yeah, when? 3 dots. Then, Thursday, 7 p.m. I'll pick you up. He set the phone down. He sat on the couch. He looked out the window at the city lights, and he thought about a bus stop, and about $40, and about the fact that sometimes the world runs on people doing small, dumb things for each other. And sometimes those small, dumb things turn into something else, something bigger, something that looks like a life you didn't know you were building until you looked up and saw it there. Thursday came. He wore the blue flannel. He got a haircut. Finally, she picked him up at 7 in a car that was not an SUV. Just a car, a sedan. She was driving it herself. No, Stephen? Not tonight. Where are we going? You'll see. She drove them out of the city, south, toward Rutland. He watched the road. He watched the hills go by in the dusk. After about 30 minutes, she pulled off the highway, onto a side road, and then onto a smaller road. And then she pulled into a parking lot that Jimmy recognized. It was Helen's, the diner, where he had dropped her off 6 months ago. The sign still said H. Lenz. The E was still missing. Beth, I wanted to come back. I never did. I thought maybe we could come back together. They went inside. The same waitress was working. She did not recognize them. They sat in a booth by the window. They ordered coffee. They ordered sandwiches. And they talked. Not about work. Not about the case. Not about Donald Pierce or Gary Moss or any of it. They talked about other things. She told him about her father. About growing up in a house where money was everywhere and love was conditional. About the way she had learned to measure her worth in spreadsheets. He told her about Karen. About the way she had died slowly. About the way Ashley had sat in the hospital room drawing pictures. About the way he still reached for the other side of the bed. And at some point, maybe an hour in, maybe more, he realized that this was the first time in a very long time that he had talked to another person who understood what it was to carry something. Beth? Yeah. Why did you really sit at that bus stop? She looked at him. She looked out the window, at the parking lot. At the dark, I told you. I don't know. I think you do. She was quiet for a long time. My father, when he died, he left me a company, and he left me money, and he left me the understanding that I was supposed to fix what he had broken. And I spent 5 years trying. And I realized at some point that I could not fix it from the inside, because everyone inside was lying to me, or lying to themselves, or both. So I started going outside, to the edges, to the places where nobody knew I was looking. And one morning I sat down at a bus stop in a town I didn't know, and I sat there for a long time, and I was waiting for something. I didn't know what. And then you pulled over, and you gave me $40, and I realized what I had been waiting for. What proof? That there were still people who would do the right thing when nobody was watching. That the company my father built still had pull in it worth saving. She looked at him. I found that. In you. He didn't know what to say. He reached across the table. He put his hand on top of hers. She didn't pull away. They sat like that for a while. In the diner, with the missing E in the sign. In the town where everything had started. And outside the window the October night was cold. and clear, and the stars were out. And somewhere very far away, a man named Gary Moss was sitting in a federal prison in Pennsylvania, thinking about the choices he had made. And somewhere closer, a little girl named Ashley was asleep at her great-grandmother's house, dreaming about volcanoes. And somewhere in between, in a diner that smelled like coffee and pie, two people who had met at a bus stop were holding hands across a table, and the world, for a moment, felt like it was exactly the size it was supposed to be. Not too big, not too small. Just right.